Well, you won't see it in the mainstream media, at least not the national media, but we've dug up 3 stories about government reforms right here in the U.S. of A. I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, and this episode of Right Angle is brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. Nebraska Governor Pete Ricketts ordered a hiring freeze last fall, and so far he's cut 296 state government jobs through attrition alone. Nebraska's public servants have been winnowed to a mere 13,490, which should help the state government trim a little of its $900 million deficit. Meanwhile, in Mississippi, Democratic Representative Angela Cockerham proposed a bill to strip the state's personnel board of control of state agencies, thereby holding the agency directors responsible for staffing and for salaries. And up in Pennsylvania, Democratic Governor Tom Wolf proposed cutting $2 billion in waste and grabbing another billion in revenue through business taxes. And where Republicans who control the legislature slammed Wolf for failing to address pension reform, Wolf reminded them that he offered to sign any reform bill they could pass during the last session, but Republicans in the House and Senate could not agree on an approach. Now, Stephen Green, hiring freezes, accountability measures, pension reform, are these all just window dressing, or do you see something more in these state initiatives?
No, this is the nitty gritty of good local and state level governance. Period. This is great news. I mean, maybe I'm overselling it here, but I hope not. Listen, I have an idea. This just came into my head, so I'm going to share it with you. We could have a similar hiring freeze at the federal level, where each agency can only hire one person for every 2 that either retires, is let go, or is fed to sharks with frickin' laser beams on their head. Just a thought. No, but what I find most interesting is the 2 bigger stories here. Both have Democrats as the prime movers. And I think what this goes to show you is that when put in a position of actual accountability, like you tend to get at a state and local level, that even Democrats can be responsible governors and representatives. Let me explain what I mean by that. You've got all these Democratic districts, congressional districts, that are so heavily Democratic that the only way to get a Republican to run in them would be to set them on fire. And so you get people like Nancy Pelosi and it's just all the crazy left-wingers who have lifetime appointments to Congress and zero accountability. And so that's what you get in Congress is zero accountability. You take this to the local level, and even our friends across the aisle can be saying, and what a great teaching moment that is for this country. Now, if we could just get rid of these D+80 districts and make them more competitive races, we could get that going on in Congress as well.
And just so my Pennsylvania listeners don't get the wrong idea of what I was saying about Governor Wolf, I'm sure Governor Wolf was well aware that moderate Republicans in the legislature were going to block any effort at pension reform. So that's why he said, hey, send me a bill, I'll sign it. But still, they were unable to call his bluff. Bill Whittle, in Mississippi, Democrats blocked Representative Cockerham's accountability measure, claiming that it would open the gate for outsourcing government jobs, a claim, by the way, that she, the sponsor of the bill, denies. In Pennsylvania, as I said, so-called moderate Republicans blocked agreement on a pension reform measure. How much longer, Bill, will the public put up with political nonsense like this?
We're starting to see some signs on the federal level that the government is pushing back, and I'm not just talking about like deep government spies or people on the 8th floor of the State Department. I'm just talking about the regular bureaucracy. I read a story about the emotional reaction at the EPA when Trump won, and then another one when the new EPA administrator was confirmed, and these people are in a full-on panic. They're in an absolute panic because for the first time in memory, it looks like these, rather than getting larger and paying more and more money, some of these agencies are going to be letting people go and they're going to be paying less money. Now, that's on the federal level. The reason I think it's interesting is because I'd like to test these explosives in a small, remote area before we before we apply them to every street corner in America. They're not going to go quietly into the good night, many of these people. There are some fine people in government and bureaucrats who really genuinely are trying to do well for the country. But the fact is, these are people who have always felt that that job was there eternally, and who have basically been able to set retirement standards that are simply unmeetable. They just simply cannot be met. And so I love this idea of trying things in the states. I love the idea of seeing what's going to work and what's not going to work as a prelude, especially to taking it up to the federal level, where the real money's disappearing.
Well, a key benefit of a federal republic is that the states, as you've heard, serve as a laboratory of liberty, experimenting with ideas that can catch on elsewhere. But as we discussed last week, the national media pays little attention to state and local governance, and people pay little attention to state and local news. I first got involved in politics in 2009 when I ran for local office, but I've never really been interested in politics. It's good governance that sparks me. And this morning, as I searched for news stories about state governments, that spark turned into a flame. I'm going to bring you more of these kinds of stories if I can, either here on Right Angle or in some other format. In 1960, J.C.R. Licklider, in a paper called Man-Computer Symbiosis, proposed a global network of wideband communication lines to provide the functions of libraries, essentially sharing research and knowledge for the betterment of mankind. The Internet grew out of such an idea, and we have converted it usefully for the dissemination of puppy pictures and spiteful comments and pornography. Perhaps our Federalist laboratory, dispersed throughout the states, may yet use this series of interconnected tubes to advance the cause of liberty. For Bill Whittle, Stephen Green, and the Right Angle team, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible.